goal at the Bigfoot Journal is to keep you informed on the latest happenings in Bigfoot research and news. But sometimes we only scratch the surface and need to search deeper. Our pursuit of the Bigfoot mystery is taking us out in the field, on site, and hopefully one step closer to the truth. This is our next chapter. This is our next feat. This is Deep Searches. And everything else I just mentioned, it was a good enough. In episode 13 of the Bigfoot Journal, I covered this compelling footage that was reportedly taken near the town of Hancock, Maryland. To recap, this video was allegedly taken by a turkey hunter and was posted to YouTube on April 20th, 2012. Titled Sasquatch Sighting, Hancock, Maryland, all the description says is, saw a squatch turkey hunting today. The video is only 10 seconds long. You can hear the man filming say, "What is that?" around 1 to 2 seconds in before a dark, upright figure appears. The figure in question is a considerable distance. It seems to be walking on 2 feet and is a solid dark color. The figure becomes visible about 3 seconds in, with the best image of it coming around the 4 to 5 second mark. At this point, it stops and appears to notice the man filming, before releasing a loud, deep grunt, causing him to flee. Outside of these facts, we knew very little else about this video, but since episode 13's debut, I obtained new information that might shed new light on the origins and truth behind this captivating footage. So yeah, I'm actually really intrigued. I'm definitely looking forward to doing more of like an on-site, boots on the grounds type investigation, especially with this specific video. I think it was episode 13, episode 14, where we did the, I did the You Decide segment on it for the Bigfoot Journal, and it's one of those videos. It's been around since like 2012, so man, we're approaching like 13 years now that video's been around, but I've known about it for quite some time. It was definitely one of those videos, knew about it, kind of like forgot about it for a little bit, but overall, I definitely think it doesn't get the attention that it probably deserves. Where I am right now, it's just kind of like a little bit of a pit stop for a greater trip that I'm taking in the, greater Appalachian Mountains in the West Virginia area. So when I was looking at my travel route, I just realized, yeah, what I gotta do is just tweak it a little bit, and I'm literally gonna be cutting through the town of Hancock where the video was allegedly filmed. So I just wound up doing a little more research, and I'm kind of, not to toot my own horn, but I'm definitely patting myself on the back a little bit, because I found out a good amount of information about it that's otherwise not available in the actual video. Some good, some bad, some definitely head scratching, some pretty damning, I guess you could say. In theory, I definitely could have just like gathered it and just did like a follow-up segment on You Decide about the video, but I just figured since I'm going to be physically passing right through this specific region, it gives me a good opportunity to do some, on-site, boots on the ground type research about it. So I'm really hoping just the information I lay out, the facts that I present about this video, I really hope, above all, it just helps you pick a side and just figure out what you really think about this video. Is it fact or is it yes? Since I had an opportunity to investigate the general area this video was taken, my goal is to expand what we know, study the region's terrain and history of reports, to determine whether a Bigfoot-like creature, if they're real, could potentially be in this area, and gather more facts to help draw your own conclusions on what this baffling footage shows. Maryland's Western Panhandle is a unique region that's unlike any other part of the state. Instead of white sandy beaches, a bustling sailing culture, and close proximity to cities like Washington, D.C., Western Maryland stretches deep into the greater Appalachians. With rural farming communities, along with miles of secluded mountains and forests. It's a stark contrast to what most people think when Maryland comes to mind. The town of Hancock is located in Washington County. With a population of more than 1,500 people, Hancock sits in the narrowest part of Maryland's panhandle. It's about 2 to 3 miles across as the crow flies, creating a wedge between the states of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. One of the oldest settlements in western Maryland, Hancock became part of a crucial transportation route in the 19th century. After the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal was completed in 1839, Hancock turned into a thriving commercial center. One of Hancock's premier attractions is the section of Maryland's rail trail that runs through it, a 28-mile shared-use path which follows the former Western Maryland Railway. The route entered Hancock in 1905, joining Baltimore and Ohio until it closed in 1976. While the rail trail is a fixture in Hancock's storied past, it was here where I gained my first sense of the potential Bigfoot activity that this area seemingly has to offer.
I found an interesting post on the Bigfoot subreddit where the OP claimed that them and their father had a knocking exchange with something on the rail trail one night. It was from a few years ago. I just came across it when I was doing my research on the turkey hunting video, but yeah, he claimed that them and their dad, they were walking the rail trail at night. They were parked by some restaurant, and they just had this like back and forth exchange of knocking sounds with something. So, you know, I normally like to primarily focus on Class A sightings, but just because here in Hancock, walking the rail trail, I just figure it's at least worth mentioning.
In addition to the video I'm investigating, Maryland has a surprising history of cryptid reports. Headlined by stories of sea monsters like Chessie and the Goatman, Maryland also has a very well-documented collection of Bigfoot encounters. Its most famous story is the Sykesville Monster, which was cited on numerous occasions in the 1970s and 80s. Maryland ranks 5th on the late John Green's database, with 226 reports, more than renowned high-volume states like Ohio, Florida, Michigan, and Illinois. Dozens of reports have also come out of Northeast and Southern Maryland, which continue to this day. But what about Western Maryland? For context, Maryland is the U.S.'s 5th most densely populated state, with about 636 people per square mile. However, the 3 counties that primarily make up Maryland's panhandle, Washington, Allegheny, and Garrett, respectively have 318.6, 172.1, and 45.7 people per square mile, well below the state's population density. Moreover, the Maryland Panhandle has over 491,000 acres of forest, accounting for nearly 20% of the state's forested land area. So how do these details pertain to my investigation? Well, between Western Maryland's location in the Appalachians, its sparse population density, and vast forest acreage, one can argue it has plenty of places for something like a Sasquatch to hide, or at least provide enough cover for one to move through the area undetected. As you can see in this snapshot from the Bigfoot Mapping Project, Hancock looks to be centered around 3 to 4 concentrations of reports spanning across Pennsylvania, Maryland, and West Virginia. Aside from the footage that brought me here, I found about a handful of reports that happened in Washington County and the area surrounding Hancock. There were 5 reports that specifically caught my eye, which happened over a 43-year period from 1970 to 2013. The first 2 respectively happened in the summers of 1970 and 2000, both near the town of Williamsport. Another allegedly happened during the spring of 2006 at an unspecified location in Washington County. However, I was particularly intrigued by 2 reports coming out of the surrounding area, despite them not actually happening in Maryland.
So in my investigation of other Bigfoot sightings in the surrounding area, in addition to the video I'm here to investigate, I found maybe about a handful-ish or so, but there were 2 in particular that caught my eye. Both of them happened outside the town of Warfordsburg in Fulton County. So right now, we're in that area. It's in southern Pennsylvania. We're literally only a few miles or so, like 2 or 3 miles or so from the PA-Maryland border. What I found interesting about them was there were 2 sightings. They both literally happened about 3 weeks apart in 2013. The first one happened July 15th, 2013, probably about a mile or so as the crow flies that way. Basically, sounds like a farmer was riding their tractor. They saw a whitish gray Bigfoot-like creature. It claimed it was eating berries. When the farmer went to turn his tractor, he said the figure dove into the woods. So 3 weeks later, on August 6th, in this exact area we're at right now, a woman claimed that she was driving her car and pretty much described seeing the same thing. A whitish gray Bigfoot-like creature either standing on the side of the road or crossing the road. The area we're in now, these are the coordinates of the location of the supposed sighting. I found them on a Google map. It might have been crowdsourced or organized by a specific organization, I'm not sure, but it was titled PA Bigfoot Encounters. Especially like the August 6th sighting, I always find those particularly interesting because just because of what the witness was doing at the time of their sighting. The witness was driving. If you sift through most data, you find out that pretty much around or a little more than 60% of Class A sightings happen when the witness is driving. So just the fact that it happened in that nature, I really think it gives it a degree of credibility. If you just look at the surrounding area, my guess is it either might have been standing just alongside here or maybe on this incline and probably just stood there and watched the woman drive by, or it might have just went right up this incline or right down the slope. This is a pretty rural area, really rural area actually. A lot of farms, houses are spaced pretty far apart, a lot of private property, definitely a lot of just like rural roads like this where traffic's extremely light. So especially back in 2013, where I'm sure things were a lot less busier than they are now, I definitely don't see why not. Definitely don't see why something like that could have happened here. So, and then the most interesting part too is this is literally less than a handful of miles outside of Hancock, Maryland. So despite happening in a different state, it's still technically part of like that same land area. So therefore for me, it constitutes checking out.
So if they're real, it sounds like Squatches do, at the very least, get spotted here on occasion. I clarified why Maryland's western panhandle could potentially be a suitable Bigfoot habitat. Now, my next task is to figure out exactly where the video that brought me here was filmed. Based on the limited information available, I could only go off 2 major details: the video allegedly being filmed by a turkey hunter, and it happening somewhere in or around the town of Hancock. So, I needed to find a nearby location that A, is vastly wooded, and B, permits spring turkey hunting. Unless this happened on private property, there is one major location that checked off both these boxes: Sidling Hill Wildlife Management Area. This public land space is roughly 5 to 7 miles west of Hancock. It's in the town's jurisdiction, and most importantly, turkey hunting is permitted here during the spring. Using this information, Sidling Hill became my main focus for field research in this investigation. By seeing Sidling Hill firsthand, it'll give me a better idea of what the terrain looks like, and if this area is indeed capable of supporting a Sasquatch, or hiding its presence. Western Maryland has a diverse ecosystem that features apex predators like coyotes, black bears, and bobcats. In my initial breakdown of this footage, I confidently ruled out each of these predators, leaving one of 2 likely possibilities: a human or Sasquatch. And to that point, I came across something that could very well reveal the origins of this bizarre footage, and potentially end this investigation before it even begins. Remember that Bigfoot subreddit post I mentioned earlier that described one father and son's alleged knocking exchange on the rail trail? Well, someone in that post's thread brought up the exact same footage I came here to investigate, which led me to find this comment about it that makes a very damning claim. In this comment, one Redditor alleges the footage was a hoax, claiming that his friends from high school made the video. Although it was posted over a year ago, I messaged the Redditor asking for more information. I wanted to see if he could elaborate more on the backstory, and if he knew exactly where his friends recorded the video. Like I suspected, he said they reportedly filmed it at Sidling Hill, and claimed it was simply a high school prank back when YouTube was relatively new. He did say his friend who supposedly wore the suit was over 6'5", and found it amusing that so many people believed the figure was big enough to rule out a human. His mention of this specific detail, plus a few local eateries and spots he recommended for me to check out, seemed to confirm his local knowledge of the area.
As far as what I found on Reddit, it's obviously disappointing to a degree. We don't want that to be the case, but in this field, it's just commonplace most of the time. That winds up being the case. If you do this research, if you're going to do it the right way, honestly and thoroughly, you have to pay attention to things like that. You can't ignore developments like that, ignore information like that when it comes up. So, it's just part of it, just part of what this is. I had a limited exchange with him, on Reddit. We were messaging each other back and forth. Seemed like a nice dude. Definitely had some local knowledge of the area that he shared with me. He actually recommended this sandwich place that turned out to be pretty good. So I don't doubt that he's from the area. The details he gave me, they were pretty specific. When I asked him if he still kept in touch with the people he went to high school with that he says made this video, if he still talks to them, if he could put me in touch with them, he said that after everyone graduated, everyone just kind of went their own separate ways, moved to different parts of the country. So technically, I really can't corroborate his story, and as of now, it's just that, a story. And just to stay true to the objective approach, I just feel like for this investigation, my job is just to gather all the information and facts, lay them out, no matter what they be, and just let the viewer decide. So, unfortunately, as of now, despite how specific he was, it was clear that he's definitely from this area. I have to label it just as anecdotal evidence. I can't rule out the possibility that maybe this dude isn't being all that truthful. I mean, people lie about this stuff. I don't know why, whether for attention or anything like that. I'm not saying that's definitely the case with this video, but it is something that people do, and as long as I can't corroborate his claims, this dude I spoke to on Reddit, that's just the route I'm going to have to take with how I look at it.
This bombshell claim put my investigation at a crossroads. Much to my dismay, I admit there's a very good chance that this footage, which I've held in high regard for many years, could wind up being a hoax. And while I'm willing to confirm that this could very much be the case, there's one detail that might back the video's potential authenticity. In my episode 13 breakdown, I ran the footage's audio through a spectrograph to compare the signatures of the figure's grunt and hunter's gasp. As you can see, the signatures look totally different. The figure's grunt is flat but relatively wide, and it thickens around the middle. The hunter's gasp has more of an arced shape that vaguely resembles a boomerang. At face value, many Bigfoot believers will automatically deem these distinctions as absolute proof that the figure in this video isn't human. After mentioning how the spectrograph signatures did not match, the Redditor said his friend, who allegedly wore the suit, did not do anything to modify their voice, which I found interesting. Hoping to leave no stone unturned, I took my investigation out to the field.
All right, so right now we are at the Sidling Hill Wildlife Management Area. It's, technically in the jurisdiction of Hancock, Maryland, and yeah, this is where the video, the Bigfoot turkey hunter video, was apparently filmed. Some of the main reasons why I'm here is just because, number one, I kind of just wanted to get like a feel for the area where this video was filmed. I think this is a great area too that'll just give me more of a sense of just what the environment here is like. The most important reason why I'm here is because I want to try to do a recreation of the video.
I set up a recreation at Sidling Hill to complete 3 objectives. See how closely I can replicate an audio signature that matches the alleged figure's grunt. Determine how much of a factor distance is in the appearance of spectrograph signatures. And if I can establish a ballpark range of how far apart the hunter and figure were in the original footage.
All right, so we found a decent spot. Actually, I just realized it looks like there's a game trail right here. So that'll make it a little easier for me. So I'm gonna measure out 4 distance units, 25, 50, 100, 200 feet. I did some measuring with my shoes. So bottom of each shoe, it's about 11, 12-ish inches, give or take. So, I'll use that as a base just to, gauge my distance from the camera. I'll set markers for each one. And
to reiterate, the 4 tiers of distance, 25, 50, 100, and 200 feet, will be essential in fulfilling the tasks of this recreation. Although the Redditor said his friend, who allegedly wore the suit, didn't do anything to modify their voice, I made 2 grunts at each distance tier. One I just did normally. We'll call it the unmodified grunt. The other, our modified grunt, I placed my sleeve over my mouth, hoping it would simulate the acoustics of grunting while wearing a mask, at least to a certain degree, which someone in a suit would have been wearing, and look for any differences between the 2 signatures. I admittedly also didn't feel like buying a mask, so I figured the sleeve over mouth thing would suffice for this purpose. I believe this field test has a lot of implications, as it could put the reliability of spectrographs on trial. If I was able to successfully create a signature that resembles the figure's grunt, it could not only be the final blow that officially debunks this footage, but on a larger scale, might prompt us to question and revisit spectrograph readings from some of the most highly regarded audio that's touted in Bigfoot research. We'll first pull up the 25 feet analysis. Copy that up. Just to clarify, this one here on the left, that's the original clip. The one in the middle, that's the unmodified grunt that I made. The one on the right is the modified grunt where I just did that to, simulate the voice going through a mask. So, right away, I noticed the
signatures of the grunts that I made, the modified and the unmodified, both look identical. My grunts, they have that same curvy, boomerang-ish shape in their signatures as the hunter's gasp right here. My grunts really aren't a precise match with the hunter's gasp, but you could still see that distinct, general curvature right there. Both of the grunts I made look absolutely nothing in any way like, the grunt the figure in the original footage made. In terms of volume, just play it one more time. The hunter's gasp and my two grunts sound a lot more similar, a lot more closer in volume compared to the grunt that the figure made. So just keep that detail in mind. Moving on to 50 feet. So right here too, same thing as the 25-foot distance tier. Both of my grunts look exactly the same, identical looking signatures pretty much. And they so closely resemble the signature from the hunter's gasp. The signatures that my grunts made on the spectrograph, they also do show signs of being a little fainter, as expected. But in terms of volume, same thing. My grunts the grunts I made definitely still sound a little closer to the hunter's gasp, just, in the context of volume. All right, so let's play the 100 feet. All right, so here's where we start to see, some more differences. My grunts, while they still look identical, you can tell here that they're starting to flatten a little more. But comparatively speaking, the grunts that I made, they still more closely resemble the signatures of the hunter's gasp. They still kind of have like that general curvature right there, so no, crazy, insane differences. Having said that, though, volume-wise, they're beginning to sound more closer to the figure's grunt. So I think that's a really important detail to note. 200 feet, we got that up. Here's where things get interesting. So although the signatures of the two grunts that I made, they continue to uphold looking identical, they look nothing like the ones though I made at 25, 50, or 100 feet. As you can see here, they really look nothing like the hunter's gasp anymore. They look much flatter, definitely look more like, instead of having like that boomerang shape that, the grunts I made at the first three distance tiers, these here, they look less like that. I'd say maybe more like a golf club or like a hockey stick type shape. But yeah, like my signatures, they're not, at 200 feet, the grunts that I made, they're not really necessarily a precise match with either the figure's grunt or the hunter's grunt, but you look at parts of the signature of my grunts at these higher frequencies right here, I say that they look more similar to, the signature made by the figure in the original footage. Having said that, though, what I think is interesting is, at least in my opinion, the grunt that the figure makes, it does sound a little louder than the ones I made at 200 feet. As far as my takeaways, the grunts I made didn't seem to make any difference as far as the shape of the signature. Some of those higher frequencies, you definitely saw, a little filtration in the volume with the modified grunts compared to the unmodified ones. But as far as the main determinant, I was trying to figure out the actual shape of the signature, there really weren't any crazy distinctions. As far as, comparing just the volume of the grunts I made with the figure's grunt at, all four distance tiers, while there's a few variables to consider, I'd probably say, the figure could have been somewhere in the 100 to 200 foot range away from the turkey hunter. While the signatures that my grunts made on the spectrograph, while they aren't an exact match with, the ones made by the figure at 200 feet, it does seem to demonstrate how human signatures, the further, I guess, a recorder is from, the source of the sound, the less recognizable human signatures seem to become, at greater distances. What does this mean for the turkey hunter footage? I mean, the only detail I'm kind of snagged on is how my voice sounded fainter at 200 feet than the figure's grunt. But if, like the Redditor I spoke to said, if the person in the suit was indeed 6'5" or taller, people that height, they tend to have deeper voices, larger chest cavities. The grunt that the figure made sounded much deeper than the ones I made. So I don't want to say this necessarily is a final nail in the coffin for officially debunking this footage, but between the Redditor's claims, the specific details he provided about the backstory, local knowledge he seemed to have of the area, and just my takeaways from this field test, as far as it being real or fake, I guess this is the best way to put it. If I had to give 49% odds on whether or not this video is real or fake, I'd probably give 51% to it being a hoax.
If my analysis is any indication, then for those who believe or want this footage to be real, especially when you take the Redditor's details that he provided into consideration, it didn't do them any favors. I did my part in examining this footage, its backstory, and laying out the facts. But ultimately, I'll let you make your own determinations. So, unless new information emerges, my probe into this footage is complete. But my investigation on whether a Bigfoot is capable of potentially residing or staying hidden in this area was just beginning. Regardless if the 2012 footage is real or fake, between the reports coming out of this area and promising environment it seems to offer, I thought it was worth going back out in the field at night and see if I could gather any potential evidence or signs of alleged Bigfoot activity. I conducted the night ops part of my field investigation over 2 nights, both at Sidling Hill. For my first one, I returned later that night after conducting my field test. The following audio and video you're about to see are my findings.
Okay, we are officially out in the woods. Pretty dark, pretty freaky. It's almost 1 in the morning. Yeah, there's a lot of weird sounds going on. Alright, so let's see what we could find. I'm thinking like a car's about to pull up into this parking lot. Alright, so I think what I'm going to try to do is just poke around here for a little bit, and definitely want to leave a recorder out overnight, do some calls potentially. Want to see how far I could get. Ideally, I'd like to get to one of those spots I set out, but it's kind of hard to say. It's interesting. Right now I'm basically on top of like this ridge line, and at first I thought, you know what? I don't know if this is really an ideal spot for like activity, because like I could literally see like town lights and stuff like that from where I'm at right now. I mean, as you get further down, like I saw during the day, it does get pretty, it does get really secluded. Pretty, secluded, but and I kind of realized, well, supposedly Squatches, they like, if they're real, They like those vantage points. They like having the, like that overhead, being able to look down, and they like being able to look down and whatnot. Like when we were in Catawissa, we did that investigation. That whole thing happened. That howl we got, it sounded like it came from a ridgeline. So I guess we'll see what happens. Kicked off. I'm already almost at a battery recording of this. Doesn't really make any sense.
When I first started therming, my camera got an immediate hit. Granted, it was something small, most likely a rodent. I was encouraged to find early signs of wildlife. Despite my growing apprehensions of being out in unfamiliar woods, alone, late at night, it compelled me to keep moving forward.
Trying to find these two. Set this. Oh, here we go. Here's a nice rock.
While I was off camera for pretty much 90% of the shot, it wasn't without reason. I was trying to find a spot where I could set down the camera and record myself doing a howl. However, while doing a quick thermal sweep of my surroundings, I got this interesting hit. At first, I jumped the gun, thinking it was a lot farther away and therefore could have been much bigger. However, after getting a little closer and viewing it from a few different angles, whatever it was looked to be relatively small. But based on its brightness, I believed it was most likely something alive. It didn't move the entire time I recorded, and despite filming the figure for about 4 to 5 minutes, I couldn't get any precise distance measurements, nor could I locate it after shining my light in the brush.
Alright, so I got something kind of weird on the thermal before. Couldn't really make it out. I observed it for a while. Couldn't really get much of a read on it. It was just kind of like sitting there, so hard to say really what it was, but wasn't really moving much. So, well, actually, scared the crap out of myself. I shined the flashlight towards its direction for like a split second. I thought I saw eyes and like a human face. Scared the crap out of me. Like, I'm still kind of like shaky off of it, but at any rate.
In terms of duration, my first night investigation at Sidling Hill was frustratingly underwhelming. After this shot, my camera, which I knew for certain had a fully charged battery, inexplicably ran out of power. So between these technical issues, plummeting temperatures, and sporadic windy conditions on top of the ridge, I left out a recorder and decided to call it a night. Pretty quiet night for the most part. Conditions really weren't as ideal as I would have liked. It was definitely a lot colder than I realized. I was probably a little underdressed for that, but it started to get, like, on that ridge line, it started to get just sporadically windy, so it was kind of like a pain in the ass. Just to it made it really difficult to like hear things and just
try to balance everything with the recording, therming, everything like that. Definitely made that difficult. Yeah, for the most part, I really didn't hear much. I got, conditions aside, I still got the recorder out there overnight, so I'll go back in the morning and get that. Hopefully that produces something interesting. Theorem, I got 2 hits. First one was definitely something small, like a rodent or something like that. Second one, I'm imagining that's probably the case as well, but it's definitely going to warrant a closer look. I'm definitely going to take a closer look at it. I'd like to get a second, at least like another pair of eyes on that footage, because it was definitely a lot bigger, much bigger than the first thing I got. But it didn't move. At least it didn't appear to be moving. I filmed it from different angles. I was even like standing, squatting, crouching when I was filming it, and at first I thought it was something like in the trees or brush directly in front of me, a few feet in front of me, because I was the ground was kind of like sloping-ish where I filmed it, so I thought that was the case. But like I shot my flashlight, I zoomed in on it, and whatever this was, to me it looked like it's possible whatever it was could have been behind the brush. So there's that. But yeah, definitely interesting. Just being there during the day, at night, just on that ridgeline alone, whether the footage that brought me here, whether it's legit or whether, the guy on Reddit I spoke to, he's telling the truth. Nonetheless, especially just walking through that area at night, I don't see why not. If they're real, I don't see why not. That was Squatch could definitely support itself in this environment, in this specific area, or at the very least, cut through undetected. Especially on that ridgeline. I didn't really get that far tonight, but the areas I was at, it's pretty secluded. Overall, I thought it was a pretty solid night ops. I definitely didn't get as much done as I would have liked. It definitely didn't stay out as long as I would have liked. But it's so different when you do these things with other people, or even if it's just you and one other person compared to just doing it by yourself. Because I'll admit, like, even the second I'll stand still or something like that, just every single sound I hear, I kind of freak out about. I turn towards it. I got the red light, the thermal going. You really, especially when you're alone out there in the woods in the dark, you're on edge. A lot of just like thoughts going through your mind and everything. Even here, just sitting out thinking about that stuff, I'll admit, I'm scared.
I returned to retrieve my recorder the next day, and thermed the same spot where I recorded that figure to see if it was still there during the day.
So, one reason I'm kind of glad I'm here is also, that weird little like hit I got last night. I don't know what it was. After I reviewed the footage last night, it definitely seems like it was kind of closer than I originally thought. So, I just want to do some therming right now and just see, like, if that hit's still there or what the deal with that is. Yeah, at least from what I could see, it doesn't look like it. Whatever was there last night doesn't seem to be here today. I mean, it's definitely different therming during the day, but I don't know. Whatever that bigger hit was last night, it was much, it was decent size and relatively close. I mean, it's probably pretty small ultimately, but definitely sizable enough for me to notice. So Guess we'll never know.
I didn't find anything extraordinary upon reviewing the recorder's audio. The most interesting sounds I heard were 3 sequences of knock and clack-like noises that occurred between 10:14 and 11:34 a.m. Incidentally, I think it's worth noting that the latter part of these sequences happened about an hour before I returned to retrieve the recorder. Each one spanned over the course of a few minutes, so I'll play a quick clip from all 3. Aside from occurring within an 80-minute time frame, what I found interesting about them was they all seemed to have their own distinct pitches and tones. To me, it sounded like they all could have been made on different surfaces or materials, and more notably, at different distances. All 3 sequences also appear to have very similar sounding rhythms. I will admit, there was a lot of noise pollution on this recording, so I can't rule out these sounds being man-made. However, they were compelling nonetheless, and, in my opinion, worth a closer look. To reiterate, my first night investigation at Sidling Hill didn't produce anything groundbreaking, but the bizarre thermal hit and sequences of knock-like sounds I recorded, at the very least, showed these woods were relatively active. I returned to Sidling Hill about a week after my initial visit. Despite facing more unfavorable weather conditions, I wanted at least one more night out in these woods, and upon arriving, things took an unexpected turn.
Alright, so we are back for our second, I'm back for my second night investigation here at Sidling Hill. The first night really was, the conditions really weren't too ideal. I wasn't able to get too much done like I previously mentioned, so it's been about a weekish or so since that first night investigation, but I decided to come back for a second one. I was down in West Virginia for about a week or so. Had some other buddies that were filming some content, doing some investigating on the way back. Figured, you know what, might as well just come here. But yeah, so that first time, conditions really weren't ideal. Ironically, conditions tonight are worse. It's, very wet, rainy out, foggy, really foggy out. Unlike the first time, it's much earlier. It's probably around, like, I'd say 8:39-ish right now. Gotta check an exact time, but coming out much earlier than when I did my first go about. But something really, really cool happened, though, literally when I was walking in. I was actually trying to film, like my opening monologue, had a little more light, but as I'm walking in, this car pulls up. And, you know, I kind of got a little sketched out. So 2 people walk out with flashlights. They were heading in the direction that my car was parked. So I thought that maybe, what if these are like cops or game warden or something like that. I'm like, I think I'm surprised. I think I'm allowed to be here, but I just went back just to double check. Turns out they were 2 mushroom hunters, local people in the area. We got to talking. I told them, wound up telling them what I was doing here, and one of them said that their mother, who they claim isn't really into this cryptid, high strange stuff, had a road crossing right here in Sidling Hill about 2 or 3 years ago.
Tell me when.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So my mom, she was leaving the road. You know how you pull out and you're on the main road here on top Sidling Hill, the sharp turn. You go right down the mountain. She was coming up in the fog like this, and she seen clear as day a tall, 2-legged, dark creature just walk straight across the road. And like I said, she's not into that stuff, so she wasn't expecting it. And she's still like, I swear I'm not crazy, but no one believes me. And to this day, she holds to it.
Do you remember what year it was?
It was only three-ish years ago, maybe.
Oh, it was fairly recent. And then did you say what color it was?
She said it was dark. It was dark, 2 legs, tall, and it just walked across in front of her headlights because it was dark and foggy, so she didn't see like a full.
Yeah.
But she seen it clear as day, and she's like, I'm not crazy, but. Yeah.
I recall I'm gonna have to poke around there after I finish up here.
As soon as you pull out on that, like I said, we're on the sharp turn. You go right, then you're going down the mountain. And she was coming up, and it was right there before you get to this sharp turn. So really interesting story, and the best part was like I ran into these people by chance. If I'd left maybe a few minutes, like a minute or so earlier, I probably wouldn't have ran into them. So ran into these people totally by chance, totally unexpected, unplanned. Did not anticipate for this to happen, but just running into them and just being able to get that story and documenting that story, I think for me is really like just the cherry on top for this investigation. So regardless of what happens tonight, I'm really glad that I came out here and did that, just because, like I mentioned earlier in this episode, finding other sightings specifically here in Washington County has been difficult enough because they're very far in between, but getting that story and especially hearing that it happened here in Sidling Hill in conditions just like this and fairly recently, and road crossing and everything like that, really just bow on top of this investigation. So
after speaking with the 2 mushroom hunters, I ventured deeper into Sidling Hill, and after finding a spot to set up shop, as luck would have it, I spotted something absolutely bewildering.
Alright, so here's what's going on. I haven't been here too long. It's only been about 15-20 so minutes. On the thermal, I've been observing some type of hit. It's pretty bright. Alright, so I'm sitting down.
Unfortunately, the battery ran low on my thermal imager when I first started recording.
No. The headset was charged.
But after hooking it up to a charging bank, I managed to film the glowing figure for over 10 minutes.
Of course, with all the rain and the fog, using the thermal conditions kind of suck right now, so no definition with like the trees or anything like that. Really can't see it now. It's like my seat over there. I had my seat over there. I had my chair set up. That's really the best place I could seem to see it, but it kind of like faded in and out. It's definitely behind like some trees or something like that. I tried shining my flashlight, but the beam just gets absorbed by the fog. You look on thermal right now, just like the conditions and everything like that. It's just, just like a wall of gray. Like I really have to like pause and like stare at it. But that's kind of interesting. I'm definitely a little on edge right now just because I don't know what it was. I don't know how far away it is. I don't know if it's alive, if it's, maybe knows I'm here or what. But, especially hearing that story from that mushroom hunter, definitely has me a little on edge right now. I'm close enough where, you could obviously hear like the parkway, hear some dogs in the background. But, I don't know, I mean, bear are common in the area, bobcats and stuff like that. Mushroom hunter told me stories about like mountain lion sightings, of course, so kind of hard to say. I think what I'm gonna do is do a howl and see what that gets. I want to see if maybe whatever's down there does something. So here we go.
I continued observing the figure for a little while longer, but eventually lost sight of it when the rain started to pick up. As a reminder, it was very misty and drizzling intermittently throughout the night, so these were some of the worst possible conditions for therming, which explains the gray, featureless background, and why I barely got any context of definition, detail, or distance of my surroundings in this footage. I found this part of the footage to be particularly interesting. You seem to get a slightly better sense of the figure's fuller shape, and while I didn't observe any significant lateral movements, one could say it seems to be making some slight motions. But I can't and won't say that's the case with 100% certainty.
So I guess just to recap tonight's events, it was interesting, the second night ops. It's been a little over a week since the first one I did, and there were definitely a lot of commonalities worth mentioning. Conditions weren't ideal. I think I mentioned this before. I'd even say they were worse this time around than last time. Got some interesting stuff in the thermal. And again, I had to cut things short. One of the reasons being that the weather just wound up turning against me. Last time it was just the wind and lower temperatures. This time though, I was just wet and cold, and when I was out there, just sitting there, the rain started to pick up on and off. The forecast looks like it's gonna be coming, start to intensify again any minute, unfortunately. So the two most interesting things were those mushroom hunters I ran into told me a really interesting story of one of them about their mother. So that was just great chance find. I'm really glad I wound up coming out, mostly just because of that. That there just made it worthwhile for me. But I got another thermal hit. This here was much further away. Obviously the conditions really limited just the scope and depth of detail of what I was able to see, but it seemed like the longer I observed it, and I got about 10 minutes of footage observing this thing, the more defined it, the more definition I seemed to show, the more defined it seemed to become just detail-wise. I can't, it's really hard to tell how far away it was, how big it was, at least through that thermal camera. So I'm really anxious to get it on a screen just to see what it looks like. Hopefully I could, make out a few more things a little better. I really hope that winds up being the case. But I'll admit though too, just seeing that thing and just the prospect of it being as big as it could have been, and the possibility that even with the rain it might have knowing I was there and it could have been watching me, that was definitely enough to motivate my decision to head back. It was, at the end of the day, that factor, it was fear. It's amazing how much fear can just limit what someone can do, one's capabilities, and especially in this field of research, I really wonder how much fear has prevented other researchers, especially ones that are doing solo stuff, from potentially making that breakthrough discovery or getting that, groundbreaking photo or footage if they just stood their ground a little longer. But it's just one of those things. When you're out there, especially by yourself in an area you're not really too familiar with, sometimes you just got to listen to your gut. I mean, when you're on the outside looking in, watching the stuff, it's easy to judge, criticize, but go out there for yourself and try it. And when you're in those situations, like, you feel any degree of discomfort, any degree of unease, like those instincts, they kick in and, man, they take over. But nonetheless, though, I think I documented a good amount. Pretty happy with everything I got tonight. The good thing is I left my camping chair where I was, so tomorrow I want to go back, try and do a little recreation of that thermal footage. I got the recorder rolling all night. Hopefully that, we'll see what that winds up picking up. So there could definitely be a lot more that I wound up uncovering. So fingers crossed. In the meantime, I definitely got a lot to review now, so we'll see.
While heading back to Sidling Hill the next day, I also checked out the spot where the mushroom hunter said their mother had her alleged sighting.
All right, I just wanted to make this quick because this is a bit of like a busy main road, but basically, if I understood her description last night, this is kind of the spot where the mushroom hunter I met last night, her mother allegedly had her sighting while she was driving. So she was in the car, conditions just like this, and she claimed that I saw something dark on the side of the road, and I forget if it was either standing there or ran across, but yeah, this is pretty much the area. You got these steep slopes here, another one over there. I've heard a good amount of stories of people, whether they're driving or just, allegedly seen these things running across the road. They seem to go up and down these, steep inclines with very little trouble at all. So definitely an interesting story for sure. But just being able to actually physically check out the alleged location, though, really gives, like some good insight, good context on just, what the conditions were like and, what they might have potentially seen that night.
This story was perhaps my favorite finding of this investigation. Between the looming doubts from my field test and Redditor's claims on the footage that prompted this investigation, hearing the story that took place at the same location this footage had been filmed, no less, was extremely encouraging.
All right, it's the next day. I'm going back just to get my camping chair and the recorder I left overnight. What I'm particularly looking forward to this time around is when I get there, I'll be able to actually see what direction I would have been looking at when I got that giant blob on thermal last night. So I think hopefully it'll give me some context as far as like if it was even something alive, how far it might have been, and just, how far off the ground it could have been too. Because, those latter two factors, that might determine if maybe it was something in the tree or maybe it was something further out in the distance that I happened to catch. Given how crappy the conditions are right now, how they were last night, I kind of doubt that was the case. But if it is, then whatever I got last night was huge. So we'll see. Probably not going to spend too much time just because I'm on a bit of a tight schedule traveling wise. And, as you can see, conditions really aren't ideal. But, is what it is, I guess.
While there, I took some daytime footage both regular and thermal, from where I sat the previous night. I also marked the location's coordinates, so I could get a bird's eye view and try to gauge the distance between myself and whatever I filmed that night.
Okay, so I'm sitting, same spot, got some garbage bags over just to keep me dry because, it's obviously soaked. But I'm looking. Here's what it looks like from where I'm sitting. And I just realized this, but where I set up last night, I was only literally maybe 50, 75-ish yards, give or take, from where I posted up the first time I was here a little over a week ago. So, whatever I might have seen that night, I don't know, it's hard to say. Like, recording. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not there. I could see like a little more definition compared to last night. Like I could sort of see the ground. Really can't make out much as far as like the trees go and stuff like that, but the figure in question, the figure, whatever I saw, it's obviously not there no more. Yeah, it's hard to say. Whatever it was either really far away or it might have been something posted up in those trees over there. Distance obviously being a factor. If it was something far away, it would have been huge. If it was something in the trees, even then, it probably would have been a decent size. It was quiet, it didn't really move much, but I think the most frustrating part too about getting that footage last night was if the conditions were better, if the conditions were more ideal for the thermal, I bet you I probably would have been able to, probably, make out more details with it of whatever I had that night, and B, probably would have been able to get a better idea of exactly where it was located. And if that would have happened, I definitely would have been able to at least zero in on it and try to identify it, whether it's with a thermal or get close enough where I could just flash it. But it's just how it goes in this field sometimes.
I gathered enough data to do some side-by-side comparisons and see how much light it can shed on helping me identify or rule out what I did or did not film.
All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, I just want to give you a bird's eye view of the area in Sidling Hill where I did both my night investigations. All right, so this right here is where I parked my car. This here's the trail. So I walked from there to about here. So a little over like a quarter mile or so. I posted up my camping chair. I was sitting like maybe right here-ish, and I was pointing the thermal camera kind of like in this direction. So from the general area where I was sitting to the far end of that clearing where, the tree line began again, looks to be about 200-ish feet. So as far as how that relates to the distance between myself and, that glowing figure that I recorded on the thermal camera, if I had to give a ballpark range of the distance, the figure might have physically been in, I'd put it maybe somewhere in the 180 to 220-ish feet, probably somewhere in that range, maybe 250-ish feet if I wanted to be extra generous. Next thing too, I just want to go over a few specific clips from the footage. This first one here, this is like when I first started filming the figure. As you could see, it's just, on like the standard view, it was only 1x. If we look like right here-ish, you see this little like thing of like dark gray jutting out in front of it, kind of like right here-ish too. You see it right there. I guess what I'm getting at is I just think those details there seem to indicate that the figure was behind something or some things, within that tree line. So if that's any indication, I think whatever this glowing thing was, I definitely filmed it while it was inside the tree line, probably the far end of that clearing. All right, next, so let's bring up this footage here. So it was magnified 2 times, And I just want to get a little side-by-side of this footage here of the figure, and I want to put it alongside the daytime thermal footage that was also magnified 2 times, and this regular daytime shot that I just took with my regular camera. I want to bring our attention to the daytime thermal footage and the daytime shot. So maybe around right here-ish. All right, you see how like the top section of this footage is kind of like dark gray. This bottom is kind of like a lightish gray, and you see the border between the two. It's kind of like this, it's very subtle. You could kind of make out this like slight curve. So it starts from like the central left edge of the screen and kind of just curves down towards sort of into that lower right hand corner. You look at the daytime shot, you just kind of see how like that edge where the ground, it kind of follows that same curvature, that same shape, general direction. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe there's a good possibility this shade of light gray, shade of dark gray, that might be that same curve, kind of where like the ground separates with, where the tree line starts, maybe to like a terrain change. So when you compare that to my thermal footage here of the figure that I took the previous night, with this detail in mind, I do think that the figure, whatever I got, most likely was probably on the ground. In regards to our figure here, as far as like its potential shape, size, whatever this is, appears both maybe horizontally, sometimes vertically at some point. Again, I don't know if that could have been the figure moving on its own, me moving the camera, just, the pixelated quality of the, camera image's resolution, maybe a combination of all of them. But I guess what I'm getting at is, as far as using these shots to determine whether or not the figure was standing on 2 legs or was maybe quadrupedal, it's ambiguous. So I think you can make a case for either of those scenarios. It's obviously impossible to, definitively identify what this figure was, what I recorded. If this was something living, a living creature, it might have been a decent-sized animal. And especially when you consider the minimum distance between myself and the figure, cope that with the poor thermal conditions and just the fact that it was such a bright hit, that gives me more reason to believe that it might have been a living creature, and definitely a relatively large one at that. As far as what it could be, if it is something on the larger side, just in terms of like stature, size-wise, myself and a few other researchers I asked to review this footage, the consensus kind of narrowed it down to 3 candidates. The first 2, most likely maybe a deer, possibly a bear though, which that would have been pretty exciting if it was a bear, because I never got one of those on thermal. As far as like the long shot, the one researcher from Untold that I had, reviewed this footage, said if that was the case, he kind of mentioned it in passing, so I guess he didn't put much stock into it. Maybe it was a Sasquatch that was on all 4s. I definitely would like to return in the future and try to do a recreation, maybe get someone to like stand in where the figure was and try to get some potential scale, maybe to get like a better idea of its potential size. I think that could probably be the possible next step if and when I'm able to revisit this. But as of now, ultimately, I got no choice but to classify it as a blob squatch. A pretty intriguing one at that, but yeah, blob squatch, total unknown.
Once again, let me be clear. It's impossible to say with absolute certainty what this thermal footage shows. But in my years of research, this was some of the most perplexing and bizarre footage I ever recorded. And, as is usually the case in this field, it left me with more questions than answers. My goal of this investigation was to uncover the truth behind this captivating footage, or see how close I can get to finding it. And while I formed my own opinions, I'll let you decide what it shows. Regardless of what you believe, my investigation into this video scratched the surface of Western Maryland's surprising Bigfoot history, and if this creature is real, between everything this area's terrain has to offer and strong signs of wildlife activity I collected, it seemingly meets the requirements that such a creature would need to conceal its presence. I hope to return in the future, but until then, as I continue to pursue this elusive mystery, the search will only get deeper.